Now a story about the KKK you have to see to believe. In the 1970s, Colorado Police Sergeant Ron Stallworth decided to go undercover and infiltrate the group. He answered a newspaper ad by phone and was invited to join them. There was just one small problem. He was black. Sergeant Ron Stallworth was the first black detective in the history of the Colorado Springs Police Department. And in 1978, he risked his life to go undercover and become a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan. Over the next 5 months, Ron Stallworth kept in regular contact with the KKK, even having phone conversations with Grand Wizard David Duke. While he was primarily gathering intelligence, Stallworth was also able to stop crimes. And now he's sharing his incredible story in a new book with the only title it could possibly have, Black Klansman. Joining me now is retired Police Sergeant Ron Stallworth. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Reverend. One correction, though. I was a detective, the first black detective in the history of the Colorado Springs Police Department, but I retired as a sergeant with the Utah Department of Public Safety.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Let's put up your KKK card again, and it says right there, member in good standing. And here's your KKK certificate, signed by the Grand Wizard himself, David Duke. So, Ron, why did you decide to do something so risky?
Well, for one thing, it was my job. I was an intelligence detective, and part of my job was to stay on top of subversive groups that might arise in the city. And the KKK has a long history of being known as a domestic terrorist group. And they were emerging in the cities, so it was my job.
What did you do when the KKK wanted to meet you in person?
Well, obviously, I couldn't meet them in person, as everyone can tell. So I had to come up with an alternative plan, and that alternative plan was to find someone to stand in my place. So I got a white officer, a white detective from the narcotics division to pose as me.
That's who
for face-to-face meetings.
That's who we're seeing in this picture here. You know, what were your conversations like with the Grand Wizard David Duke?
Believe it or not, I had a variety of conversations with him. Some of them were just basic, hi, how are you? How's the wife and kids? When he wasn't talking his Klan nonsense, David Duke was a very pleasant individual to have a conversation with. It's only when he got off talking about the Klan that he became the Mr. Hyde to his Dr. Jekyll persona. The one interesting conversation we had was when he told me, I asked him one time, aren't you ever afraid of some smart-alecky N-word person calling you, pretending to be white, wanting to gain information on the Klan? He said, no, I never worry about that because I can always tell when I'm talking to one of them.
He said he could always tell when he's talking to one of them, and he was talking to you then.
Yes. And I said, how can you tell? He said, by the way they pronounce certain words in the English language. He said, they don't talk like educated white people like you and I. I said, I don't understand. Give me an example. He said, for instance, take the letter or the word R. He said, educated white people pronounce English the way it was meant to be, like you and I do. He said, with the letter R, we say it the proper way. We say R, R. But one of them, the N-word, they will say R-ra, R-ra. He said, so from now on, when you talk to someone on the phone that you don't know who they are, talk to them for a little bit and get them to say that particular word. It's a dead giveaway that they are one of them. So from that point on, I said, Mr. Duke, I want to thank you for that. From now on, when I talk to someone on the phone and I'm not sure who they are, I'm going to make sure to ask them to say that word in some way, shape, or form. And from then on, when I talked to David Duke, I would always find a way to incorporate that word in my conversation. So I would say, Mr. Duke, how are you doing? How are the wife or kids? Are you coming to Colorado Springs? And he never once figured out that he was talking to one of them.
Wow. How did you feel about having to use the KKK and deal with their offensive language when they talked about minorities?
It didn't bother me at all. In fact, it was kind of comedic in some occasions because I was playing the role of a white supremacist, a white racist, and I would be talking on the phone. My sergeant, who was white, would be sitting in his chair listening to my end of the conversation. So I'm talking the language, the buzzwords of hate to these guys on the phone. My sergeant would be listening to me, and he would be cracking up with laughter, turning red in the face, sometimes practically falling out of his chair, and in some cases he would be choking up with laughter. I would be laughing at my sergeant, laughing at me, pretending to be white racist. My sergeant, in some cases, would be running out of the office laughing so hard, and I would be laughing at him while trying to maintain a professional decorum and talking to these guys. It was quite funny. Sometimes it would resemble a Saturday Night Live skit. But they never caught on.
What kind of information did you learn while you were undercover?
Well, they talked about bombing. We had 2 gay bars in Colorado Springs at that time. They talked about bombing the 2 gay bars. And it's interesting to note that the majority of the Klansmen I was dealing with were Fort Carson Army-based personnel, a couple of whom had reconnaissance training, so they were familiar with explosives. They talked about bombing the gay bars. They aligned themselves with a ultra-right-wing survivalist group called the Posse Comitatus, and the Posse Comitatus wanted these Army personnel to steal automatic weapons from Fort Carson, so that gained our interest.
So these guys were no joke. These weren't just some guys running around in these silly kind of hood and uniforms. They were serious.
They had the potential to cause a lot of heartache and pain for us. I also identified 2 members of the Klan who were assigned, they had top security clearance and were assigned to NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and they were manning the console that monitored North American air defense systems. I had a meeting with the deputy commander of NORAD who made a phone call to the Pentagon after I showed him my investigation book with the names, and he talked to somebody at the Pentagon. I was told he was talking to a high-ranking general, and as a result of that phone call, these 2 personnel were removed from their top security posts.
That's scary. Well, I'm going to have to leave it there. I could talk on and on and on. This is an amazing story. Ron Stallworth, thank you for sharing this story. And again, the book is Black Klansman, and you can order it yourself at blackklansman.com. We'll be right back.